And we are live on Facebook and we are recording. I am John Mercer, president of the Las Vegas Triathlon Club. And we are here to do our very first video conversation coaches spotlight. And it is a great pleasure to have Max Jones on as our first coach. And I've got Bob Gamble on as a co-host, helping to make this happen. Hey, Bob, how's it going?
Good, doing well.
Awesome.
Glad to be
Great.
here.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to you in just a second. I want to just say another big thank you to Max for doing this, making himself available. I'm a little biased because I've known Max for some time. I've had the pleasure of working with him in his graduate program at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where he did his master's and did a really neat thesis on using intermittent compression on running performance. And believe it or not, we're still actually in that area, Max, and still doing some work on that. So it's you were at the leading edge of that. And I'll also have to say, it's a pleasure to have you on, not only as a coach, but as an elite athlete. And I have very much always enjoyed towing the start line with you and having fun racing with you and against you. And it's really great to have some camaraderie, as well as pushing each other to try to go as fast as we can. So thanks for doing this. And I'm actually going to turn it over to Bob to say, Bob, will you give us an introduction and kick us off?
Thanks, John.
Okay, I met Max a few years ago, and when I did, Max helped me through a pinched nerve in my back, and he introduced me to the concept of, and you can correct me anything if I'm saying anything wrong. This has been a while, and I've got some old brain cells here. I remember you started off talking about functional fitness, and you wanted, I was talking flexibility, and you were talking mobility. There's a difference there, and it was from the standpoint of you helping me. That was how I was first impressed with you. The second time, I still remember I was taking pictures after a shoulder surgery, and I couldn't race, and you were coming down towards Boulder Beach off of the hill into T2 on one of our club races, doing about 30 miles an hour. And most people, when they do a flying dismount, they'll take they'll kick their right, leg out or take their foot out of their shoe, swing it around the back of their bike, and then stand on your left pedal and then hit the ground running. Not Max. Max takes his leg off and he pulls it up over top of the top bar of his bicycle, his knees up in front of his face. And I thought, this is the most flexible guy I've ever seen, pulling this move, going downhill at 30 miles an hour, coming into T2. And I was thinking, man, so my point is that you put your money where your mouth is, and you're talking mobility and flexibility. And it was, you do that. It's just a lot of fun. You're obviously a really talented runner. I remember when you won last year's the desert. What was that called? What was that called? The 3 degrees of hell.
They have the 3 degrees of hell.
3 degrees of hell. Yeah, you're a talented runner and you're a talented triathlete. What got you into coaching? Let's use that as a springboard. How did you go from doing that to say, I'm going to be coaching now?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of athletes, when they've been involved in a sport long enough, I think that the general consensus is when they have success or you've been doing for a while, people just tend to ask people who have done it, and there's the experience factor. I think that's definitely something that started the conversation. Also just being in my wife, Nancy Jones, obviously has been a coach for well over a decade at this point. So, she'd always bounce ideas off me just from an academic side with work I did with, John at UNLV, and a lot of the big picture concepts of just how the body is trained and the physiology of it all. You start kind of putting some stuff together. You kind of look at like what a lot of coaches are doing, the big time coaches around the country. And then starting to look at, what my wife is doing with people. And I started just kind of putting some things together, and, you kind of tie personal experience with some academic knowledge, and then obviously get some formal education. And then you kind of can start forming some theories and, try it on yourself first, and then maybe offer your services to free for some people initially, just because you want to get some trial work and get some good feedback, good or bad. And then you kind of go from there. And, initially had some success with people more just transitioning from like a fitness lifestyle or weight loss lifestyle into a multi-sport triathlon lifestyle, just purely because it's a healthy outlet, or transition that people seem to do really well with. I like to say I like to push people in the triathlon concept because I think just the multidisciplinary act of it is, I think, really good for people just to learn multiple skills, and it's a great way to exercise full body, and it's a great community. And you basically get you get to work with triathletes, you get to hang with runners, swimmers, bikers. I mean, you get a whole group of friends. So, helping people build community when you're trying to make these fitness changes, I think kind of was a natural transition for me to go from fitness to the endurance side.
So your philosophy then, it sounds like you do like having training and exercise and work in all of the different disciplines. And
Yep.
How does that go into how you coach? How does that play into how you coach?
Yeah, I mean, the body just adapts to stimulus. Like if it's lifting a weight or it's pedaling a bike or you're swimming in the pool or you're running, your body adapts to the load that you stimulate with, and it gets better over time. And it appropriately dosed with the right type of quality and the right consistency and volume, you adapt. You get faster in the pool, bike, weight room, doesn't really matter. So if you really just take the basic principles of how the body adapts to, anything really, you can apply that to just swim, bike, and run. And that kind of sets the basis of, I really kind of treat it like there's the health side of things and there's the performance side. And then based on how people come and present themselves with their goals and whatnot, do they have more health-minded goals? Do they have more performance-based goals with, getting to certain races or qualifying things or getting pro cards or anything like that? And then you start developing the conversation of what emphasis they want this to have on their life, what priority level they want to give it. Because, you're usually dealing with people that are working, entrepreneurs, moms, dads, all the above. And, so identifying what they really want out of this sport helps you identify with how well or how much they can handle and really what their end game is, so.
And let me jump in, Bob. Let me jump in because there's a good question already related to this on Facebook. You talk about swim, bike, and run and incorporating all those and flexibility. How about strength training? Can you talk about where strength training fits within your coaching philosophy?
Yeah, I mean, I treat it like a pillar. And if you have 4 pillars to a building, you have your swim, bike, and run aerobic disciplines. You have your strength training or your fundamental training, whatever you want to call it. Anything that takes care of your body that's not swim, bike, or run, I'll put in its own little boat. And you have your recovery work, your sleep, and your nutrition. So, I mean, regarding strength training, I think it's an integral piece, and it's usually not like a lot of people can obviously get away with it and not do it. But in some shape or form, you doing hard intervals on a swim or a bike or a run is really strength training. If you really think about it, the way you're stimulating the tissue. But if you're talking about lifting weights and things like that, I think there comes a time when people get to a certain age or they want to get to a next level or they want to improve their body's ability to be more durable. Weight training just comes naturally part of the equation just because they know it isn't there because it's just a time thing. Normally people sacrifice that out of it. I think that's the biggest reason why it doesn't happen all the time. It's just, you have to get in a swim, bike, run X amount of times in a week. And it's usually the strength training I think falls to the wayside, but I would treat it as the 4th discipline. And I would argue, if you had a certain amount of hours a week, you need to sacrifice some of the other ones to make that happen. Because at some point, if you're injured and you can only strength train, you're going to have plenty of time for it then, So it's going to come about if you want to do it with a physical therapist or a chiropractor anyway, because you did something wrong long enough.
Yeah. There's 2 things that you said there that are important, and I want to make sure that everybody got the point. Injury prevention comes through having the strength of the foundation that you're working on your endurance. If you're working too close to your max in terms of how much strength you have, you're going to get injured, and you're all over that saying, yes, you need the strength so that you can work on your endurance. So yeah, I appreciate that, and that's something I wish I would have learned about 3 or 4 years ago and built my strength up and not got hurt. The other thing that's really impressive about the way you approach training. And what you said was you really focus on what someone wants to accomplish. You're not just like, I am a triathlon coach, we're going to make you a good triathlete. You listen instead of just telling them this is what to do. And I think that is just so important. It's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to get a lifestyle out of this? Do you want to get on the podium? Do you want to get ready for this? And that's one thing that I remember right from the very start when I first met you, is the fact that you were saying, you know, what's the issue here? What do you want to work on? You know, what's important to you? So, you know, that's a valuable thing. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I had my first tri coach ever, and he probably will listen to this at some point, named Jonathan Mason with MP Multisport. He's based out of Colorado, great family friend at this point. And he has a saying called goal expectation management. And basically you set the goals and expectations of what you want out of it. And then that sets up the walls of how the training is going to go. And, you know, if you say you want to do X and you're executing, you know, maybe not as well with Y and Z, then it comes back to what you identified early on of what your end game is. And if you just want this to be healthier, you want to do this to make friends and be part of community, that's awesome. Just, I think the biggest thing with someone is initially identifying like really what their why is. And then as a coach, really, you know, using that as the bridge of communication to apply training to, you know, if someone says they just want to have friends and stuff and, you know, just be healthy, having them train 25 hours a week is a good way not to have friends because they're going to be training all the time, you know.
And it's also a good way to not be healthy when you get injured while you're working out too hard.
100%. Yeah.
And while you're on that topic, one of the physical therapists that's working on my knee is a young person, and they saw my visor and the Tri Club visor, and they're just real eager, real excited. Ooh, I want to get into triathlon. She's eager. She's enthusiastic, young. She doesn't have a background in all of the three sports, and actually in either any one of them, but she's very eager. What would you tell somebody, you know, in terms of setting their goals, who is just getting into the sport and they don't even know what their goals are yet? What would you say to somebody like that, new, young? Because we actually have a lot of those in the club as well. There are a lot of new triathletes here. What would you say to them to get them started?
Yeah, I mean, I think you on the, like, you, all the people that are part of the, like, the, you know, putting together what Tri Club, what it is, and John's really good about reaching out and getting volunteers, and, you know, he always pushes his undergrads and grad students to get there for exposure and things like that. So, I mean, I think step one is just coming to like a club race, volunteer, and just hanging out, having a cup of coffee, just getting exposed to really what's entailed with a swim, bike, and run. And you know, maybe it's not what you see on the Ironman Kona YouTube, you know, like that's like the 0.5% of what triathlon looks like. And you know, just understand, like, you know, what it takes to be in the water. Like, and, you know, if you're not a good swimmer, that's probably the best place you need to start, and to have familiarization and just being safe in the water and being safe of being in that environment. You know, when it comes to, you know, cycling, things like that, that's usually ones that people have probably the least skill requirements to get into, because they probably did it as a child and learned to ride a bike. And running, you know, in theory, everyone has the ability to run. So it's not usually the hardest thing. I think just initially is exposure, maybe getting involved on a volunteer basis, and then maybe picking one of the disciplines that's probably the weakest one to get some familiarization with. And then that transitions into, like, maybe doing like a gym, you know, at a facility like a multi-gen or a lifetime sort of gym-based triathlon to see what the body does doing all three disciplines in a day with zero expectations. I think a mistake is someone that hasn't really been doing it a whole lot, jumps into a paid race, and you don't have a great experience, and then you relate that experience to how it always is going to be, and then you're out, you know. I think if someone is serious about getting into racing and has, you know, maybe some baseline performance goals, I think getting with a coach in some capacity is important, or at least just picking the mind of one, and just seeing, like, what does it entail to be successful with the race, and then do that to a point where you can then have some expectations for it, you know. So
no, and that's a good point, just getting involved in it just to see what's going on, because at first you don't even know what you don't know, and you don't know what questions to ask. So just seeing it and getting involved, and that's what John's real good about this, is by, you know, getting people in getting them, to volunteer for races and things. So
I mean,
for new folks, that's great.
John will laugh about this, but like my first couple tries, first one in Utah I did, I forgot my bike shoes. Yeah. And I had to race the whole dang thing with running shoes on. So that was questionable, but that was like, it just goes to show like there's a whole learning concept with the sport, that if you just need to talk with people and things like that, that's something that is important.
We're learning. Yep, we're always learning.
Yep.
And we've all learned in different times. And I remember the first time I got, in the water, got 100 yards out and couldn't breathe. It's like you just run out of breath. So the stuff that we all learn.
Well, now, Bob, let me jump in here. I'm going to actually take a step back and Max, when was your first triathlon, and how did you get into the sport?
Yeah. So I think it was 2015 Rage. It was 2015 Rage. And I moved out to Las Vegas following up a internship in 2012 to get into the fitness training industry, and graduated. And I think this was right before I started grad school, John, or I had just started. And I, now my wife, but at the time she was a colleague, Nancy Jones, she talked me into it because we were working together, and she said, hey, you run and you have a swim background, or at least just generally from being from Florida, you'd probably be just fine at this. And, so I let her talk me into it. I did some pool sessions at LVAC. This is the funnier part. I hadn't ridden a bike since I had probably been like 8 years old at all. It was just something I didn't grow up with a whole lot. And then obviously I had a collegiate running background. So that obviously was where the prime part of my fitness came in. And we did Rage, and that was a pretty crazy experience. I think I probably did just about everything wrong. I had a road bike I rented from Broken Spoke out west, and I remember it had the cage pedals and everything.
Goodness.
And it was a good old time. I was so happy to get off the bike. So that was the first one.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. And Rage is such a great race, but you're right. That's an eye opener. It's a tough race. The heat starts to pick up, and we've got the hills. But so take us through being, obviously you went from that race and became a high performing athlete, and then transitioned over to coaching. But you're also, you just finished National Guard, and
yeah.
Again, thank you for your service for going into National Guard. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
But I imagine, you at some point are making a decision, coaching or doing sports. But I think it sounds like you're actually trying to combine those two. So talk a little bit about what you're going to do with the National Guard and running, and then the coaching as well.
Yeah. So, I had some mandatory Army training from January to March for medical Army Bullock, it's called. And I came back, and the day I came back, they said, hey, we need you for the Corona COVID-19 response team. And I said, yes. And so I've kind of been full-time with them ever since, with Task Force Medical. I'm operating as a command and control. So working with a lot of people, running Corona testing centers around the Valley. It's been a really fun ride. I have a lot of great teammates and people I work with, and I've learned, probably a lot of people are laughing, but I probably got 5 to 10 years of military experience in about 3 months with everything going on. But I'm really blessed to have a good team that I work with, and I learn and get stuff wrong all the time. And they're like, sir, this is how you do it. And I'm like, okay, got it. And they're all really nice. But yeah, so one of the nice benefits in the guard capacity is you have the ability to compete in an athletic context for a lot of different teams. And obviously the one that was most accessible, and I have friends that are doing it right now, is the National Guard running team. And it's strictly like a strictly running program right now. I think they have a tri program adjacent somewhere else, but the goal right now is to try and get in shape for a marathon and run the Lincoln Marathon in Nebraska. And provided that goes well, I get a slot on the National Guard run team. And the cool part is, besides having cool teammates and obviously other service members running with us, I get the chance to compete around the country wearing the Guard uniform and doing all that. So I've never had a job environment that also, allowed me to compete athletically and actually nice enough get compensated a little bit to do it, which is great. So I make a joke with the wife, and it's like I'm like a semi-pro athlete a couple weeks a year.
Oh no, you got the best of both worlds there, man. You're doing what you love and getting paid for it. I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah. And I really do feel like I do enjoy multi-sport and triathlon, things like that. And ultimately in the last couple of years with Army training and a lot of different business stuff coming up, running was just more efficient time-wise to be competitive at it to the level I want. My goal is, once I make the marathon team, and I'd like to maybe transition back into triathlon. I miss riding the bike. I still swim when the pools are open, just on my own. So I kind of train like a triathlete, if you will, but I'm using it for the outlet of running right now. But obviously once the world starts kind of getting back to normal, I'll probably transition to doing some tries sometime early next year.
Well, it's great because Bob said this earlier. I mean, you're walking the walk, you're talking the talk, and I think athletes respect that and seek advice out from people like you that you're in the sport, you're immersed in it at many different levels. But maybe talk about the type of athlete that you coach. What type of where's your niche for the market here?
Yeah, it seems to, for some odd reason, it's trended with people that are, I would say, mid-level performers that want to become high-level performers on a national, or I'm really lucky to work with someone that wants to go professional. I think we both know what we're talking about. And I think I couldn't really identify why. I haven't worked with more beginners and whatnot. I think the easiest answer is, my wife, Nancy, who, is, I would say she's amazing with the hand walking part of what the beginning of triathlon is. And she's really gifted at taking someone who's really fearful of being uncomfortable and being in that environment and really walking them through that. So, me kind of just having more of just a understanding of physiology and training at that level, it's just naturally graduated me to working with people that are kind of that, I would say, mid to upper pack sort of performance levels. I mean, I don't want to think I have a niche. I think I can work with anyone, provided we have a good rapport and things like that. But I think just developing a good communication relationship, I think that's the important thing. But yeah, I think that's usually who I very high level goal oriented people is who I tend to work with. And that might be just more biased to my personality type. I'm not sure, but it's just who it's trended towards.
Well, and I think it probably does speak to your personality, but the way that you approach coaching too, and approach racing, because you did your master's, and I know you post articles to or links to articles on science of training. So maybe talk through, where do you get your information now? How do you be contemporary? Because this triathlon world continues to evolve, and running as well, from nutrition to strength training to just periodization and all that. So where do you get your information? How do you stay up to date?
Besides what you send me, John?
No, I don't. No, I don't send you. No, you're sending me stuff. I love it.
Yeah. So I am a part of USAT as far as just online member, things like that. I do read up on their articles a lot. I notice a lot of the articles on their website are more like feeder articles that pull you into deeper concepts, and I always look at the white papers that they reference. Looking at a lot of the white papers or literature on some of the scientific studies, just because we've had the background of reading it, I'm able to kind of get the gist out of things fairly quickly, and like, how is this really going to matter to someone that is just trying to get their triathlon or not? I think I'm really interested in, ways to, boost performance in ways that aren't like super well known or novel, like looking at heat training, how does that affect the aerobic system, things like that. But I guess to answer your question, John, online articles, white papers, I'm a part of a couple different like podcast groups. Like I really enjoy Sweat Elite, which is the group that looks at like a lot of the Kipchoge journals and things like that. I have a couple books by Jason Koop, who's really big in the ultra endurance running world, that's written some cool stuff. You know, following the big guys in triathlon, like Mark, I can't, I'm breaking the last name, 8-time Ironman champion. Yeah, Mark Allen's books. We have like 6 of them here. So I prop them open. And what's fascinating is a lot of the concepts that they came up with, I mean, they really haven't changed. I think we're just coming up with different ways to say it. I mean, you apply appropriate load for the person over time with consistency and consistent quality efforts, and you keep them out of trouble from an injury standpoint. People are going to adapt. And as long as you have people that are cool and are accepting of the process, and they have a good lifestyle balance, and they're able to be successful in other parts of their life, with their work life, their personal life, they still have time for their kids if they have them. That's being a successful coach, is where you help them balance that. So it's more of a lifestyle accountant. That's what I really like to call it. You're just doing it in a triathlon context. That's what I think. And unfortunately, it's a really big challenge, because there's 3 things that people have to be good at versus running, biking, or swimming, you know?
That's awesome. You have to be careful that it doesn't become a full-time job.
So I don't know who told me this, but I like to, I try to quote things that like I said it, but my wife would kill me if I said this. They say two long course. They say it's good. It's okay if you have a long course partner and then a short course partner, but if you have 2 long course partners, it's called divorce. And I know that's not necessarily true for most people, but it's pretty darn hard to have a good balance in your life when you have 2 high-level performers alongside all the other things that life throws at you.
Yeah. I can only think of one couple that, well, there's probably more, but Tim O'Donnell and Miranda. I mean, that's tough. That's
yeah. And I mean, they don't work though. The work is triathlon. Like they're not 40-hour a week work people.
That's right.
And they have, they have all the other facets of life for handle. I'm talking about the average Joe,
Oh. No, that's great. Well, going back to the, how do you stay current? One of the things I know you have the ability to is to take the science and then figure out how to apply it. And you spoke to that. And I think that's really a powerful skill to have. But let's see, where is I going with that? That one, so you stay current. With this current time where we're all doing things remotely,
right?
Obviously, even something like this, how do you in the regular world communicate with your athletes? You talked about that, and how are you doing it right now?
Yeah, I mean, so usually with just with a client that's already kind of enrolled with me, I have like a weekly email, a live Google Sheet doc that I have with them. They have full access to it. I have them usually enter in like a journal entry of their life, essentially work outlets, things are, they kind of do like a self-stress management, kind of what's going on, what's stressing them out. And they're able to fill that out. And I do that on a weekly basis with them, or a daily basis if need be. We usually get on a weekly phone call if the athlete isn't kind of close to me. In the normal world, I'd like to meet up with them weekly or bi-weekly, maybe get a workout with them in. I really enjoy doing that and jumping into one of their workouts and doing that. So, going for a longer run with them or getting, my butt kicked by one of them in the pool or cycling them or what might be. So, I think in a non-corona COVID-19 environment, a weekly phone call, obviously consistent phone text, and then getting that interpersonal connection of either getting a coffee and just really getting to know them better as a person. The training is fairly cut and dry. It either happened or it didn't. How did it go? What happened? But other than that, you're just helping them manage their life outside of triathlon.
Yeah. Hey, I have 2 questions to follow up on that there, Max. Do you use a training platform? You use Training Peaks or anything, getting them to record their data? And what data do you collect on them?
Yeah. So if the person requests Training Peaks, I'll be honest, the WKO software and stuff is absolutely brilliant on there, but I have not. I probably need to take a class on how to learn all of it to really use it effectively as a coach. I do have the coaching platform for Training Peaks, so if an athlete wants to use that as their
and what's that called again? Tell me.
Training Peaks. Training Peaks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can you can manage athletes on there. And then my coach uses that with me, that I work with for running. I like the platform. I honestly just, totally upfront, I probably need to get more educated if that's something, I can, sorry, Bob, I might have lost you there, to get more educated with, to use that platform effectively. But when I use Google Sheets and things that I measure hours a week of training, time in certain zones in all 3 disciplines. If they have access to a power meter or they use a power-based trainer, we'll do power-based testing or watts test, an FTP test to come up with our 5-zone system. I do.
Do you do like a VO2 max test or anything to get a baseline with that, or do you use the FTP test?
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard you say FTP.
Yeah, so I'll just go through all 3. So with the swim test, it all kind of depends on the fitness of the athlete coming in, but I'll do some sort of swim assessment. This is all provided that the athlete can do all 3 disciplines in a semi-competent state. Like, this isn't like, right, if they need to just learn how to swim, things like that, I refer them to great swim coaches in town, like my wife, Devin McCary. There's a bunch of people in town that are, and that's just not, there's a ton of them. Whoever they can work with to get better is important. But if it's just purely for the measurement standpoint, I'll use some sort of swim test, like 10 by 100 yard or meter, 10 seconds rest, get a threshold average there. That's one of my most popular ones. If they're more of a long course athlete, I'll do like a 1K time trial effort, just to kind of get some basic metrics of where they're coming in at. And that would be for my swim. Bike, I'll use a 3-minute all out power test, and then a 20-minute power test, basically in the same set, to get some different metrics, so you can identify if someone's more of a high power threshold person, or are they bias towards more of the aerobic based power with the 20-minute effort. It's a pretty rough test day actually. But and then the run test would be like a 3 by mile or 4 by mile, and I pull out some heart rate or pace data out of a couple of those intervals just to get a feel for it. But I think the best assessment is honestly long-term is just hands-on coaching with them, understanding their rhythms, understanding how they adapt to stress, getting feedback from the athlete, developing an athlete that can communicate really how they're feeling, how certain workouts affect them. And it's not just a simple variable. Like if someone runs 12 by 400 on the track, it's going to do X to them. Like, there's a whole host of things that happen. So having multiple platforms to communicate with them on how to manage their stress, I think is super important. Like, you can't just take it for the numbers and the heart rate data and the watts data. You have to go into like what time they did it, how they did it, what was their hydrated state, their stress level, their sleep level. You can get really into the weeds with all that sort of stuff.
And how did you learn how to coordinate all this? This is, that's actually fascinating to me. How you put it all together.
Yeah. I mean, with coaches I've worked with in the past, I think the only way to really kind of program, appropriate periodized training cycles with someone is to have an assessment. And this goes into like even my fitness context. I work with people. If you don't have a good roadmap for what you're doing, you have no compass bearing to get there, so you have to do an assessment of some sort to gauge fitness to get to the next step or next goal. Otherwise, you're just throwing workouts at people, and people will get faster initially, but they'll get to a point where adaptations will be a little more limited if you don't have baseline measurements. So to answer your question, all the coaches I work with, they've thrown a ton of different assessments at me. I've researched what are the best bang for your buck assessments as far as, getting data easily out of people. How do you do with people that don't have as much equipment? Someone doesn't have a power meter, using heart rate. If someone doesn't have, a heart rate monitor for running, using pace, using RPE, getting some sort of standard. So, I mean, after I kind of gleaned all that stuff, I kind of came up with it myself. And then, but I mean, Bob, this, and John, this, there's no really new ideas. It's just different recycled ways of saying them. So just putting together concepts that people have already done, and if you communicate it effectively, you're going to help people,
Yeah.
So
that's wonderful.
Yeah. No, that's great. I want to piggyback on that a little bit. I don't want you to give away any secret sauce, although you are giving away a little bit now. So I really.
Oh, I don't believe in secret sauce, man. Circle's a circle. Everyone knows what a circle is. It's just good training. I think a coach's communication. I think that's really what it is.
Well, and it's the athlete's confidence in the coach.
Yep.
And again, that speaks to, the athletes who work with you and, the confidence that they have in you to know the landscape of the knowledge. But maybe I've got a question here from Facebook. This gets to, my next question was really going to be advice to athletes, tips and tricks, but maybe talk about the question, can I get faster if I run slow?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good literature, like with the Maffetone, Dr. Maffetone and things like that. I think it all depends on, Matt Fitzgerald has a good books on that as well. The 80-20 stuff. I think honestly, appropriate stimulus applied over time will yield results. If an athlete is young, enough in their training, running slow probably will give you the best return on investment, because it's going to keep you out of trouble from a, potentially injury running interval mindset, so again, I think just loading the body with stimulus initially for a long enough time, you'll get faster. I mean, you look at I look at a lot of the Eliud Kipchoge journals and stuff. 95% of his running is well above slower than his marathon pace.
That's amazing.
And so it just goes to show you that doing slower workouts is super effective. There is a time though where you can get more return on your investment by doing faster stuff. But I think people are a little scared, more mentally and ego ways, to go slow. Mm-hmm. And actually setting some strict pace or heart rate or power standards to really do that. I think people come into triathlon or running or whatever that they need to be really uncomfortable to get fitter. Like, it needs to be this really hard process. Like, people that look at triathletes and fitness people from the outside perspective, they think we're just suffering all the time. And actually, like, it's quite the opposite. If you're doing training right, 90% of it probably should be almost to the point where you and I can have a conversation while we're doing the sport, if you're doing it appropriately. So absolutely you can get faster going slower, but having some metrics of what slow is, I think, is the key.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up Eliud Kipchoge. I don't know if everybody knows him, but he's the athlete who did the sub-2 with the sub-tube team. It took him a couple of chances, but pretty phenomenal.
The sub-2 hour marathon.
Yeah, that's just amazing. And watching him run is really amazing. And yeah, you're right. He advocates lots of long, slow runs.
Yep.
And so how about in the recovery world or tools? What tips do you give in recovery, or tools, or maybe equipment in terms of athlete advice?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole host of different ways to do actual self-tissue work on yourself, everything from like foam rollers to trigger points to the hyper ice to the trigger guns, things like that. You kind of have things that manipulate the tissue. So like self-aid tools, like those sort of things. Massage is a great modality, I think. Ice, heat, contrast therapy. John, you helped me with my thesis with the recovery boots. Ultimately, your recovery needs to be a documented, like, not afterthought sort of action. It needs to be something that is, you do a workout, right when that workout ends, recovery starts to the next workout. So what you do in that time period, if it's another workout that day, or it's the next couple hours, recovery is all encompassing. It's mentally, it's physical, it's nutritional. If you're talking about strictly like, muscular fatigue, anything you do to compress the tissue to a point on the lower body probably may or may not have some effect. I think being in the state we are with the heat, obviously the quickest way you can replenish fluids is optimal. And how you go about that in a carb protein, purely carb ratio is obviously probably more optimal, because the body adapts with a carbohydrate protein mix, 3-to-1, 4-to-1, whatever that might be. And also just when you rest or you recover, like on a day off, like, you really need to do it. Like, it needs to be like a manifested effort that is, just as important as the big bike ride you did the day before. Like,
it has to be intentional and deliberate. Yes.
Like, if you think your Sunday off, you're going to spend all day in your yard doing weeds and doing all kinds of stuff and, working on landscaping, and you do this and you go on 6 errands and, all this different stuff. you can kind of argue you didn't really recover as effectively as you probably did the workout the day before. So therefore your interest from that workout accrued is going to be limited, you know? So you need to rest hard if you're going to train hard, you know?
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say this is great. We've been going for about 45 minutes, I think, at this
Oh man, it's not good.
No, and I knew this would happen because you know, we could talk for a while, and because you know, you cross over to my world with academics so nicely, but you also cross over to the application world just as well, and I think that's what's really neat about what you do, and you know, again, being a high performance athlete. So, but maybe let me throw this question as sort of a wrap up type of question. How do you define success as a coach and as an athlete?
As a coach, you know, based on what, you know, the athlete and you came to, like the goals of what the expectations were at the beginning of the season, the race, whatnot. You know, did we meet those? And then coming up with a B, C type of priority of goals. You know, easy example would be, you know, someone does their, you know, mid-level triathlete, you know, C level would be to finish the race, executing all three disciplines effectively. B would be to, you know, to podium in their age group, and an A goal might be, you know, finish top 5 overall. So, you know, having a clear communication of what goals are with that athlete is important going into the race and in their season. And then, you know, is the athlete happy with what they're doing? You know, are they happy with the process? Do they have good home life, work, training balance? Are they a better person because of training, or are they becoming worse in spite of it because they're not happy about their progress or they're not happy about races? I think as a coach, your job is to reel in all those other factors and really identify what's important. So that's success as a coach. And honestly, an athlete will definitely communicate to you if they're happy or not with what's going on, and in some shape or form. And as an athlete, you know, I think it's, you know, again, you know, me using sport at this point of my life to really just kind of fit a big piece of the puzzle that kind of makes everything else seem maybe less hard, or kind of is my own self-development, you know. You know, I like to grow in a lot of different ways, and that's kind of been a big part of who I am. And I'm not done pushing myself physically, and I don't think you really ever should be, but I really have some large level goals that once I get to a point professionally, academically, I'll be able to tackle those. I'm just going after one that I think is the lower hanging fruit right now with running a marathon. And I think I can do well at it if everything goes well. So.
Well, and what I love about your response, and I know this is how you are, is that even when you post on Facebook, I mean, you post about your athletes' accomplishments much more so than your own accomplishments. And I see you putting your athletes well in front of yourself. And so I really respect that and admire how you work with people and encourage them. I even think too your neighborhood quote board that you put up.
Oh yeah.
And that was, you're always trying to motivate people and to help them achieve their goals. So this has been great to chat with you about all this.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate having me on.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. All right. Well, Bob, good to see you. Take care of that knee.
Likewise.
Yeah, take care of that knee. And Max, as I said, just a real great pleasure talking with you. Always good to catch up with you. I look forward to doing some training with you, and I look forward to towing the start line with you or with one of your athletes. So that's awesome.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good evening.
All right. Thanks, Max. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Bob. Bye.